moving right along. I would like to introduce our panel experts that are here today. We have the Honorable, well, that's him, the Honorable Howard O. McMillan, Jr., Circuit Court Judge with the 7th Judicial Circuit. Thank you, Judge, for being with us today. Sergeant Danny Garcia with the United States Marine Corps.
Hoorah.
Colonel Joseph Wells, Chief Deputy of the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. Ms. Sandra Jackson, Regional Director of SMA. And Ms. Marcy Racina, Hospital Admin and CEO of NFETC. Thank you, everybody, for being with us.
Oh no, I don't have them.
Don't you worry, I've got it. So we have 3 questions that we are going to have each of our panel experts answer. You will have 3 minutes to answer each question, and then we do have Malachi in the back with being our timekeeper and holding up signs. So please keep an eye on the signs that he's holding up back there to keep everything flowing nicely, okay? Question number 1, and we will start with the sergeant down here. Deinstitutionalize, ooh, it's a big one, hold on. Deinstitutionalizationism is the process of replacing long-stay psychiatric hospitals with less isolated community mental health services for those diagnosed with mental health disorders or developmental disabilities. How has this process helped or harmed our community?
I've been in the Marine Corps for a long time. It was an institution as well. I experienced both the good and the difficulty of being in an institution. I deal with PTSD. I'm all messed up. Sometimes I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I don't know what to believe. I don't know who to believe. My faith, the only thing that I can hold on to is Jesus Christ. So that's my institution, and I know that has worked for me. I used to work as a drug counselor, so I work with heroin addicts, stuff like that. I don't know. I just see so many different things. So I can't just put a dot on it. Say this. I see both.
I'll ask the question again. Deinstitutionalization is the process of replacing long-stay psychiatric hospitals with less isolated community mental health services for those diagnosed with a mental disorder or developmental disability. How has this process helped or harmed our community?
Well, after reading Mr. Early's book, I got a bit of a history lesson on how deinstitutionalization came about and why. So what I'll say is, initially I think the intention for closing a lot of the hospitals was a good one, in the sense that they realized that treatment wasn't really happening, conditions were poor, people were forgotten about. So on a positive note, I would say that it was helpful in that it brought a lot of awareness and concern and caring. What I think should have happened, though, was that the focus should have been on fixing the problem and beefing up the hospitals and the treatment and paying attention to who was in there. Instead, unfortunately, the baby got thrown out with the bathwater, so to speak, and really a lot of the hospitals were closed and people were just sort of sent out on the street. So on that note, I would say it really wasn't that helpful, because people can't go from a very structured environment, especially if they're still having symptoms, to just completely not having structure, not having support. It was good in the sense it helped the community start to have more services, but there still needed to be a step down, and that part was forgotten.
Oh, we got another one.
Okay. Marcy?
So I've got to start out with a little bit of data because I'm a nurse by trade, but I'm a hospital administrator now. Back in 1955, there were about 340 psychiatric hospital beds for every 100,000 citizens. In 2005, does anybody have any idea what that number was? 17 for every 100,000 people. We don't have enough places to care for people, and we don't have the community resources to do it. I run the North Florida Evaluation and Treatment Center, which is a forensic mental health rehabilitation center. I've been there about a year and a half, and when I took this job, I actually was the chief of nursing first, and then I was promoted to hospital administrator. I really didn't know what I was getting into. I was excited about doing something different. Mental health is very near and dear to my heart. I have a son who could have been just like Kevin. Thankfully, we caught things early, and he's now a chiropractor and married with 2 children and doing very well and taking his meds. But I could have been in that same place. I have 216 men that are committed to me forensically by a judge because they committed a felony of some sort or were charged with a felony and needed help to be able to be competent to speak in court. So we do that every single day, and there just aren't enough community resources to get them back to when we do get them better. So for me, it did good because it got people out of bad situations, but we still don't have the resources. So we just don't have enough. We need more.
Thank you.
Since I can't see Malachi, does that mean I can just talk? Yeah, just let me know. Yeah. She'll keep an eye out for me. So, I agree with what everybody has said. I think that certainly there was good intentions behind that decentralization. Instead of having large and industrialized, institutionalized institutions for these folks with no specialized care, certainly was an issue at that time. But that structure is prior to where my experience lies, and what I experience at this point is, while I think the philosophy is good, to having supportive communities to help take care of these folks and give them what they deserve. The system is, one, almost non-existent, and what is existent is incredibly fractured, and you can't navigate it. Families have no way to navigate the system when they try to intervene at the early points. Once law enforcement gets involved, we have no way to navigate this system. There's just no type of roadmap that points us in the right direction. So we just get into a fever of trying to, like, I've got an individual in my jail, or we're trying not to bring them here. But because of the inability to navigate that, figure out what's there, what's available for what type of issue, it runs into a point where people throw their hands up in the air and say, I take them to jail. And that's really what we're seeing. Our families are just, have no other option but to call law enforcement, because we are not fraction. We're not fractured. We have a 3-digit number that everybody knows, and they know that we're going to be there. But then again, so I agree, and I'll pass it on what everybody has said, that I think the philosophy was good, but it has created a complex cobweb of confusion that nobody knows how to work their way through.
I have to be careful. I'm not on the policy end of government. I'm not in charge of making policy. I'm in charge of executing it as a judge. So I can't really comment on the good or the bad, but I can tell you what we can do on the top end when it comes to us. And it was what we did here in St. Johns County, which was, among other things, create the Veterans Treatment Court. We had folks like the sergeant down here that were coming and encountering with our criminal justice system, because in many cases they were acting out either from a mental health side or substance use disorder, which is a mental health disease, by the way. They were acting out, and they encountered law enforcement. And as a former prosecutor, I used to look at the 5 reasons why you sentence somebody. You sentence them to protect the community. You sentence them to rehabilitate them. You sentence them to punish them. You sentence them to send a message to the individual that they shouldn't do it again. You send a message to the community that this is a bad idea. And then we started thinking about it in the context of veterans, and we realized So we're sending a message that because this person went and spent 11 months in Fallujah during the surge, and now comes home and has watched several of his buddies get blown up, watched several insurgents get blown up. Now he's come home and in the middle of the night he ended up hitting his spouse. We're saying, thank you very much for your service. Now you should go to the state prison for 4 or 5 years. And from an evidence-based standpoint, that made no sense. So we approached our county commission, and they agreed. That didn't make sense. And we got to start our Veterans Treatment Court to help veterans, understanding, and I fully understand this, the Veterans Treatment Court is the camel's nose underneath the edge of the tent. We already had a drug court. We have a Veterans Treatment Court now, and with help from folks like Sandy and community partners in EPIC, we're working on developing a mental health court for this county and this circuit, and with Putnam County as well.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and hold on to that. We're going to go on to question number 2. We survived the first round of questioning. Great job, everybody. Placing mentally ill offenders in mental health court in lieu of incarceration has proven to be beneficial for all. However, some are in favor of this process and some are not. What are the pros and cons of mental health court in our community? And this time we're going to start with the judge.
All right. All right, well, good segue. There's several ways of looking at that particular problem. One way that we looked at it when we started the Veterans Treatment Court, and now as we start the mental health court process, is to look at the recidivism rate. The rate of reoffending, as Pete mentioned, I didn't realize it was 85% for those with mental illness. In our Veterans Treatment Court and in our drug court, remarkably similar results, 17%. So the chance of somebody coming back into the system is significantly reduced after they've participated in one of the treatment courts. I don't know, we don't know going in what the mental health court numbers are going to look like. We have been challenged in our Veterans Treatment Court, and I've got my mentor coordinator here. Those with serious mental illness have proven to be the most challenging to handle. And it's going to be an important partnership between the court and then also developing, there's also folks here from the recovery communities to continuing that process going forward. So that's that kind of number. Let's also talk about the other numbers. In St. Johns County, and I think Colonel Wells, your numbers are similar, to keep somebody in the county jail costs anywhere between $75 and $125 a day, depending on whether you count the capital costs of building a jail. Well, the jails don't build themselves, so you should include that. So $125 a day. Somebody that comes in on a misdemeanor just spends 30 days in jail. You've just spent over $4,000 for that. And when you put them back out on the street, what you've done is you've made them unemployed. They're not supporting their family. Their family's now on aid. They have not been earning money. They have not been paying taxes. From a dollar standpoint, it makes a lot of sense.
When I saw the questions, this was the one I was most excited about, but I didn't know you were going to make me follow Judge McGillen. Is the Circuit 7 champion for treatment courts? He's the one I called and I said, I need veterans courts. First one that we tag in when I started working with Lisa, I said, we got to talk to Judge McGillen. We want mental health court because he totally understands this. So I think part of the question was, what's the con? There are no cons to treatment courts overall. They may not work for everybody, but they work for a lot of the folks that join them. Judge McGillen's exactly right. You know, one of the challenges, not a con, one of the challenges we deal with treatment courts is community and not being educated to these. And we'll hear that. You hear, throw them in jail and lock the door. You hear community, people inside our community sometimes criticize us because our deputy sheriffs carry Narcan on their body, so that they can give somebody one more chance at recovery. It's not natural selection. I've heard it. It's natural selection. Why are we working to save that person? Because only one person has the right to judge us, and it's not a deputy sheriff. We save everybody's life we come up to. But I digress. So we have been very successful in drug court. One of the turning points in my career was when our previous sheriff said, hey, I want you to go be my liaison to drug court. And I was like, Okay, I mean, you're the boss, I'll go do it. But I had no understanding of it. I was like, it's a yes or no. Take drugs, don't take drugs. But then I've learned that. So it's absolutely right. We can keep doing the same thing we've been doing, expecting a different result, and that's the definition of stupidity. Or we can take somebody, instead of just incarcerating them, give them jobs, give them mental health, give them, all the stuff that they need, and give them a chance to be successful. It's the right thing to do. I mean, it's the financially responsible thing to do, but let's just look at it. Everybody's a creation of God, and it's the right thing to do to give them every chance to get back up on their feet. And we don't ever want to be in a position to stop giving those chances. In my opinion, treatment courts are the way to do that for the people who commit crime as a manifestation of mental illness or substance use disorder.
So it's hard to follow that, obviously. So I'm going to give you a little lesson in where I work, and one of the things that mental health court would do for keeping my patients out of my facility. I have 216 beds. It's an all-male facility. We're a maximum security facility. I have certified corrections officers that work with me. Every day I have to teach them how to be nice and kind and sweet, because most of them come from corrections. Probably 99% of my patients, it was not their first time in front of a judge committing a felony. They committed smaller misdemeanors or even whatever. They did things that they were released for. If they had gone to mental health court and gotten the mental health treatment they needed, they probably would not have ended up homeless or on drugs or alcohol or committed that felony, which could be anything, honestly, from spitting on a police officer to murder. So I have the whole gamut of patients in my facility. They are not convicted, okay? They're just charged with crimes, and they come to us for help. We do everything physically, mentally, spiritually that we can to get them to their best selves while they're with us. But honestly, under Florida Statute 916, the only real responsibility we have is to get them competent to go speak in court. My guys are free. They have time alone. They're not locked. They're locked in their rooms just at nighttime from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Other than that, they have classes that they go to. They learn how to function in the community. 98% of them are going to be your neighbors one day. So let's keep them out of the facilities like mine, and let's get mental health courts going where we can help everyone before things get so serious.
I'm not going to identify any cons. I don't think I can top what other people have said there, other than a lack of education or even compassion sometimes for this population. I really only see pros. From a treatment standpoint, outpatient treatment specifically, one of the things that we see that's really frustrating when we have community behavioral health services available, our no-show rate for people actually showing up and taking advantage of the services is about 50%. So one of the things I'm really excited about is to be able to see people who need the help but don't always want to get it because they lack an insight. This isn't a cancer that hits your kidney or your pancreas where you can decide, oh, I should definitely get this treated. This is an illness that actually happens in your brain. The organ that helps you make the decisions about should you get treatment, should you get up and go to your appointment, should you take your medicine. So giving a lot of people rights to say you don't have to get treatment is kind of a double-edged sword. So from a treatment standpoint, I believe that mental health courts will encourage and help people to comply with getting the treatment that they need. And until they get the treatment, they're not going to then be able to succeed and get better, which is the end result we all really want.
I used to be a police officer. I worked in a federal prison also. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. Lisa, we've known each other for 30 years plus. I'm the godfather to one of her sons. I hurt when I see her hurt and I see them hurt. And they need help, H-E-L-P. They don't need BS, they need help. I've worked in the medical profession as a drug counselor, etc., both in the Marine Corps and outside. We need people that really go beyond the call of duty to get involved. It's not just a job. It's really a love affair between God and between the person that's hurting. We need to step out of the comfort zone. We need to get out there and we need to do something. I've seen meetings like this before, many years ago, back in 1996, when I was part of it. And it fizzles. It's when it's hot, but then it gets cold and people forget. In the Marine Corps, I can speak for the Marine Corps because I've been in it for a long time. There's a transition when you go in, which is boot camp. So they kick your butt and you're transformed to be a Marine. Outstanding. You're disciplined. You learn what discipline is. But when you get out, after you've gone through all of the training, the combat, incidences that have happened, there's no transition to go back into the civilian world. You are lost. You are forgotten. When I came back from Vietnam, I hid. I hid as much as I could because they didn't like guys that were over in Vietnam. As they said they were killing babies, etc., etc. So I ran away and I hid, and I didn't make myself known. Eventually, I made myself known because everybody said, that's the thing that you should do now. Tell the truth, tell the story. And I did. In fact, my wife wrote a book which is out there, and the book is for everybody. It's free, and the donations are going to Lisa's cause here. Look, I don't know how to touch your hearts, because that's what I need to touch through the power of God. We need to do something. You need to look right inside your house, your neighbors, your church, your friends. There's people that are crying out and nobody responds. It's not, I don't see it all the time, the doctors and the nurses and the administrators, they got a big job. But it's up to us, people, to do something, to love your neighbor as you love yourself, to do something, to take action. It's not a game, because people are dying all around you. Don't you see it? I see it. I see it everywhere I go, every day. Even guys committing suicide, right? They say in the Marine Corps, there's like 2 or 20 people a day committing suicide. That's crazy. And let me say something coming from a person that hasn't been well and is in recovery. I don't know who I am sometimes. I have night sweats every night where I have to change my t-shirts 3 times a day. I have dreams. I don't even know how they come. They just come. And I don't like them. And I wake up in the middle of the night. My wife sometimes is startled by it. This has been going on for many years now. Where do I go to get help? I'm seeing about 5 different doctors right now. And each doctor has a different doctrine or philosophy or an answer to the question. I understand what you were talking about, your son, especially being a father. And sometimes you feel helpless, but you're not going to quit because that's your son. That's part of you. Does it make a difference if you're a journalist or whatever? That's your son, and it's personal. And so it should be personal with not only with each and every one of us here, but we need to step out of that, as I said, that comfort zone and get involved with the person that's next to you. And that means that you got to open up and you got to talk. And it means you got to ask questions. You got to say, I need help. I didn't want to be here today. It's not normally that I say that, because I've walked by foot around the world, so I'm in the public side all the time. But I didn't want to be here today because I knew I was going to have to deal with something that I had to expose myself again. And I told my wife, I said, I don't want to go because I don't want to be transparent. I don't want to hurt. I don't want to have to think about what I think about. But anyway, thank you very much.